Welcome to the Autonomous Business Podcast by Enzo and Forbes. I am extremely excited to have Eynat Guez with us today. Eynat is the co-founder and CEO of Papaya Global, the leading enterprise global workforce and payment platform that is pretty much everywhere. And Eynat, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm extremely excited to be here.
This is great. I will, dive right in because I have a question that I think everybody are fascinated about. And it's the idea that we have a new type of workforce in the world called AI agents. And I think the entire market is looking forward to hearing from you. How do you envision this new world of AI and how this new type of workforce integrates into your vision of global workforce management and payments?
Okay, so first, personally, I think that AI is extremely exciting. And it's extremely exciting mainly on a personal level and on a workforce level, because I think it's the real first time in history where we've been promised to get some time back and we can actually make it happen. Okay, if we'll take like 2 decades back when we all started using our sales phones and people told us that it's going to make us more effective and we're going to have more time and so on, we all realize, after a few decades that we are actually kind of in a never ending kind of a work environment, 24/7 work is following us. And it really kind of didn't deliver this promise. But with AI and with agents, this is completely different and it's completely the opposite. And I think that many people still see agents as something abstract of how it's going to happen. But in reality, agents are just tasks that can run in the background while you are just doing other things, while you sleep, while you are just really taking time off. And we all know that within our day, we have a lot of tasks that are not equal. We have tasks that needs our attention, needs our decisions, very strategic, very kind of important. But we also have a lot of follow-ups, research, admin things that can be administrated and eventually can create any function. And this is really the most exciting things in AI. This is not a developer thing. This is not a finance thing. It's any functions, any type, any role, more effective and eventually kind of give us some time back. Looking on our domain and everything that we do with global workforce, global compliance, global payment, we always say that we live in a world of ever-changing compliance because government, regulation constantly change. They keep throwing things at you. And for us, this is the first time in history that we can take those things as they are and really streamline and assure that we can track them, we can validate them, we can create efficiency in a way that we could have, we couldn't done it before, not us, not anyone else, but also assure that this creates a seamless infrastructures in the organization. And when we are looking on where we are now, 2026 towards 2030, we understand that within a year, 2 years, 3 years, we will see a breed of workforce that is changing from humans to humans and agents, from multiple types of agents, from people, by the way, that will also be changing from full-time employees to maybe people that are just working for you 2 hours a week, a day. And a lot of behaviors will actually going to change because we are in a world currently that is setting the rules, and resetting the rules. So for us, this is super exciting because this is an opportunity from one hand to redesign and rebuild infrastructures that are built for real time, are built for the fact that we can understand, did you work? What type of payment do you need to get? What type of currency do you want to get paid? How do you pay your taxes? And everything can happen on a real-time basis. So I think those periods, like the period ahead of us from now until 2030, will be defining the world of works, the workforce, and the individual kind of behaviors completely.
You're bringing an interesting topic that I really want to cover. So we see new type of emerging companies that are building tools for AI agents that were basically used before by humans. So we see, emails for agents, we see browser for agents, we see many types of tools that agents can do in order for them to do our work. That's basically this type of companies. And these companies are exploding and it's extremely competitive. And when it comes to global workforce and payroll, do you think there will be like a parallel infrastructure, like a new infrastructure for AI agents? Or do you think it's going to be managed in the same workforce systems as it was managed with people? were running them?
I think it's a great question. And I think that we need to look first on government. Okay. And I think it will be fair to assume that government will not very happily decide to just waive kind of payroll taxes from agents, right? I mean, because obviously this is a source of income. Every country needs those taxes and so on. So we will start seeing new and new rules that are going to taxes that are related to autonomous work and agents, because if we'll have less human doing this work, we'll also have currently less kind of taxpayers, which doesn't make sense, while we have other kind of tools that are happening. So I think that we will see. I don't know if it's going to happen in 6 months, 12 months, because I mean, government have their own phase. But we will see new rules. We will see payroll compliance and eventually regulation that is related to autonomous kind of agents and to companies that will be paid different type of taxes for autonomous works. And according to those regulations, we will be obviously kind of shaping our solutions accordingly. So it's hard for me to say currently how it's going to look like because I don't know how it's going to be dictated by the governments. I can say that currently what we see is the need to pay agents because obviously agents are first they are consuming, right? I mean they are working on tokens, so this is their bread and butters, and somebody needs to pay and eventually kind of to grant them those tokens. But also in general, those agents will be probably over time operating by companies that are offering them, by kind of individuals that are offering them. So you will have some kind of organizations that eventually are providing you agents that are pre-customs, that are supervised, that obviously kind of works according to the privacy kind of regulations that you need in the organization. And the needs to pay those type of individuals or those type of organizations will become part of our eventually kind of workforce infrastructures, payment infrastructures, taxes, deductions, supervision, everything that we do on our side.
What I'm curious about is, like, at least from what I see and how we see this as Enso, there are two teams in the world. Team A says there will be many agents, and so people will be less needed. So there will be less people within teams, or enterprises will shrink, and the world will basically get smaller because every the employee will be amplified with all of those agents that could do just much more. Team B, which is I am in, is are basically saying, since there will be so many things that people can do, there will be much more competition in the world. Companies will actually hire more people, and you can see it in some trends. And but the competition itself will become just much harder because you will basically compete not only with the brain who designed the company, designed the products, and etc., but also the agents that are actually executing extremely fast 24/7 and etc. How do you see the world? Which team are you thinking of being of?
So I think I'm leaning more to Team B, as you described it. And I would say that I think that we have probably a year, 2 years of a kind of unfair advantage for just the early adopters, right? Because if you're currently already running agents on your marketing kind of operation, on your payroll operation, on your finance operation, you are all of a sudden becoming much more efficient than another company. But they will get it. They will catch up, right? I mean, this is how the world works. We've seen it on, on Web 1, Web 2 kind of revolution, mobile devices, obviously. Companies are moving. It's just depends on the phase that they are moving and so on. So I definitely think that eventually we'll end up with a world where the games is relatively equal as it was just 2 years ago before the AI agentic kind of revolution started. You had companies that moved faster, slower, but eventually kind of they all play on the same kind of playgrounds and use the same tools. I think that humans are here to stay and we will eventually have a role, but we will also kind of create our roles and responsibility from scratch, as we did when we started with mobile, as we did when we started with eventually kind of web applications. And I think it's going to be very interesting shift. I think that the ones who will not stay are the ones that are refusing to adopt this, which is obviously impossible as you probably won't accept anyone to work currently that is refusing to use his email or his mobile kind of phone. Um, but we are in years of transition in kind of an organized chaos in or non-organized chaos in the workspace, which is actually exciting from my perspective because I think this is the first time where non-engineer and eventually kind of tech people can rise up, and we see it in Papaya internally. It's quite amazing that you have those people that all of a sudden within 6 months time become monster of AI, are creating crazy things. Their mind is constantly working, and everything that was their blocker just 6 months ago because they needed engineering team, they needed some kind of tool that they couldn't kind of have access to, are becoming an amazing kind of contributor. So I think this is the era of builder, and people that likes to build have endless opportunities currently.
Amazing. I think you're touching an interesting point where, and I assume this is a mindset thing, not only like a tool thing, um, where there are companies that are, AI native, where, CEOs, C levels, the entire organization is pushing everybody to use AI as much as possible to build stuff and to push the organization forward. But there are companies, and we cannot ignore this, that are, behind because they were not in even need or understanding of how these stuff can help them. And this creates a huge gap, right? But it also creates a huge opportunity for those companies to jump ahead. How do you see this world, and what would you recommend to leaders to do to be able to integrate those type of tools into their organizations?
So we see it a lot in our kind of word and domain, payment operation, payroll, all of those kind of functions are currently in very kind of tech forward organizations are still using quite outdated kind of functions and tools to run their ongoing operation. Now, it's not that it's not working. It's just not efficient, and obviously, kind of, and you are looking on scaling, you are looking on AI metrics of increasing productivity by 3x, it cannot kind of happen when you are still using Excel and you are still using still processing things as you did like 10 years ago. So you are producing the outcome that you need, but the organization will pay with less efficiency, with obviously kind of more slowness and so on, which those are not great things for the organization as an organization. But the great thing here is I think that 2 years ago, and we see it in payroll and in large kind of implementation, people used to say, I need 5 years to do a global kind of payroll transformation. And when we built Papaya, we always said we want to challenge this because everything that needs 5 years for implementation is failed for failure from my perspective. It's very hard to set 5 years implementation, to keep everyone kind of on their toes, to invest 5 years in order to get to an outcome. We all want to see relatively immediate outcome. Like in organizations, it can be 6 to 12 months, which is decent time to see change, and we want to see the ROI. And ROI is very hard to measure on 5 years kind of implementation. And when we built Papaya, we challenged this. We said, okay, this is data problem. Let's solve this in the way that you solve data, and data doesn't need 5 years to get into place. And now we are taking our first challenge, which was about 6 months, and saying, okay, we only need 3 months or we only need a few weeks, and we can show you the ROI. And I think that the second thing is that we also, obviously, I mean, as the time shorten, we need less money, we need less costs to make this implementation because 5 years implementation, it's also quite heavy team that is on site and is quite heavy and expensive. And I think currently organizations have a rare opportunity to take their anything as they are, like Excel sheets, datas, papers, whatever they have, the worst kind of environment, non-tech environment, and to transform it overnight to be AI kind of led, because AI doesn't care about the data source. It's very easy to source. It's very easy to structure things. So you don't need to invest in those kind of phase transition of let's sort of the data, let's create data lake and all of those kind of, I would say 3 years ago kind of a method. And all of a sudden you can create an infrastructure that is coming from a very, very kind of outdated and very manual to the next generation. And you're actually skipping the middle layer because you didn't invest in it. You don't even have, by the way, commitment, because in many cases, clients will tell us, yeah, I have 5 years commitment to this platform, so I don't want to make this change. You already invested $2 million in this implementation. So it's a great, great, great time to jump in era currently. You definitely need change kind of management ambassadors in the organization. It's impossible to have this change if you don't have somebody that says, okay, I understand this, I'm passionate about this, and eventually will be your champion and your leader. So if you don't have it internally, you need to bring them from externally. But what we've seen and what I see on the daily basis, that you always have those people internally. You always have this guy that is super, or this obviously kind of lady that is super passionate about AI. Just give them the voice, just give them the opportunity, and they will lead this. So again, I think this is an exciting kind of time for builders, but this is also exciting time to make changes that are very large changes in the infrastructures that you could not done so quickly and easily before. And I really kind of encourage a organization to run MVPs, to run POCs, to see things happening and to envision the future. Because whomever will not envision the future will arrive. Okay, it's either you're going to be part of it, you're not going to be part of it. But the future is arriving, and is arriving so quickly that it's sometimes scary.
I like that you touched this ambassador part, and I want to double click on this because this is, I think, an extremely important part of this, probably generational transformation that we're seeing right now in the market. So Enzo is doing a lots of AI implementation, specifically in the go to market space for, like, SEO, GEO, SDRs, different types of like email marketing and etc. And what I see difference, and I assume we have a very rare opportunity here to have your kind of bird view of many organizations that you're working with, that it requires a very deep cultural change in the way, because it's usually, the CEO or like the C level are pushing into the organization, move to use AI, use AI, use AI. But then there is a mid layer that is basically translating between the C level wanting this to happen and the people actually doing things. How do you, or even, let's get into the most practical kind of view you have about what are the type of cultural changes that enterprises or like, mid-market companies can do um, to change the way they use AI, or to change the way they change. That's basically the way to say it.
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, and I'll kind of share a bit of what we did in Papaya, because I think I see it in many organizations, and I think that we were exactly on the same spot. So it starts with management saying use AI, which is really nice, and I mean, use AI is very generic. You can tell me, yeah, use AI. I speak with my chat every single day. I kind of like rephrase my email. I kind of do some research, but this is not the use AI that we want to aim to, or we want to get to, right? We want to get to efficiency, we want to get to agents, we want to get to automation. Um, and then there is the second layer saying, okay, use AI to replace work that you are doing. And I think that in order to really kind of succeed, you need to take your managers, every single department, because the implementation is very different. So I think that when you are very generic and you're saying use AI, you have developers saying, yes, I use AI. 80% of my code is already being generated by AI, but HR doesn't write codes. Okay, so how do they use AI? Every department, and eventually start with mapping the things that they do, and they can be redundant tomorrow morning, and help them to get to this point. Okay, I mean, what is it that you do? You are sending follow-up emails to candidates. I mean, in marketing, I mean, we've seen it in so many things, because you have a lot of things that are actually kind of repetitive, and you just need to create those patterns. And AI is just accelerating this. Agents are just accelerating this in an amazing way. And once you have those lists, department per department, this is where you start. By the way, we started with the things that doesn't require anything that is going to the internal kind of systems. Okay, because you have those kind of friction between, I want to put agents all over the place, and then your CISO, I mean, rightfully so, is coming and saying, hey, this is private information. there is risks here. I need to build this. This is not as easy as you think. And we see also the data breaches currently, and we see the incidents that can happen because, this is kind of the biggest threat on everything that happens. By the way, for us, we
And
started
it's
with
also like
marketing.
the essence of innovation because when you're trying things out, they're breaking, right?
I agree, but I think here, because builders that are non-technical can do things without understanding kind of the consequences of eventually connecting an external kind of agent to a database. I mean, the consequences can be massive to organizations. So you need to be the responsible, you need to be the kid and kind of try things, but you also need to be the responsible adult. Say, hey, this is dangerous. Okay, so you need to play with this balance. And by the way, we started with marketing because marketing is actually the easiest one to get a very massive win. It's big budget. You can create a lot of things that are not touching PII because, I mean, that's kind of going outside of the organization and you can bring a massive impact. And for us, that was the biggest win that we created because all of a sudden people saw that we can do 2x more, 3x more, 10x more now with the same budget, with less people, and eventually kind of they got excited. And then you're going to the departments where it's getting a bit kind of harder because, finance cannot operate without kind of touching private data. HR cannot operate without touching private data. But the organizational appetite started. And then when you started with something that is working, you get your colleagues and peer to ask, okay, how did you do that? How do I do the same in my departments? And by the way, our mindset in Papaya is you have engineers and non-engineers. And this is very important because engineers can do things that I cannot do. I can do things that they can do, but this is a different conversation. And you need to assure that you are playing with the peers that you feel that you can achieve the same things that they are. So I think that this requires, I mean, change management, radical change management, and this is a radical change management requires a lot of management attention. Use AI is not a management attention. That's a nice kind of slogan, but this is already 2024. We are in 2026. This is not enough. Um, and you need to challenge your team and really kind of have a very clear also kind of a target. Okay, we have a target internally in Papaya currently to get 3x efficiency by year end. I assume that we are currently in about like 1.5 2x efficiency in many kind of departments, but cross organization 3x efficiency, it's a very very high target to get. People need to understand in the line, and also people need to understand that they are not building the replacement. And by the way, you need to have very open conversation about that. You can tell them, yeah, your role as it is currently will be redundant. Let's speak about what do you do next. Let's speak about how you eventually kind of envision yourself and how you are getting yourself to the next level.
I think it's extremely brave to say it this way because even so, you said about marketing. That's what we do as a company. When we come to companies that, for example, already have an SEO position, and then we come and say, "Hey, we're going to install 15 agents that are going to literally rewrite the entire thing, create content, do the whole thing." We do see how people are getting spooked because they're saying, "Oh my God, am I about to lose my job?" And one of the things that we're saying is, no, but you do need to learn how to manage agents. It's just the new world, and that's how it's going to work. So
Yeah.
I do want to, kind of slow down a little bit about on that. How do you manage this type of conversation? How do you talk to people, or even, what, maybe from this conversation that we're having today, how do we give people the confidence to say, hey guys, you can catch up. It's not going to kill your career. It's going to amplify it. It's just changing, and we want to help.
Look, I think you are trying to get them to other period in history, right? I mean, if you had somebody that is currently his full role is to go to kind of to the copy machine and copy pages, and then you get computers into the organization, he sees the computers coming, right? I mean, everybody understands what's going to happen. He understands that currently the role that he is doing will become redundant in days, in weeks, in months, but we all understand this. So you need to be very brave and to put this on the table. And you said, am I about to lose my job? I think that the right thing is you're about to lose your responsibilities that are associated with this job. So now let's eventually kind of rewrite your roles and responsibilities. By the way, when we started Papaya 8 years ago, that was the first question that the organization asked us. we were selling payroll managers the future of payroll, and they were like, but I do those things currently. What I'm going to do tomorrow morning? And this is a valid question because, eventually we are going to take some of the responsibilities. And we told them we are going to take the things that first creates a lot of friction and a lot of a kind of stress for you on the ongoing basis, because you never know if you're going to make it on time. You never know if you had mistakes. So we are going to validate data. We're going to automate data. We're going to do a lot of things. And actually, this is where you can scale yourself and look on the payroll as a much more strategic role. In the past 3 years, the discussions on payroll has become to payroll needs to be a leader on the table of organizations, because payroll can eventually kind of design, can plan, can be a very, very important kind of role. I think every type of role that understand that AI is coming after them needs to eventually kind of start envisioning where they're going to be kind of next. And we still going to have people with background in design, right, doing other things, because you need them, you need their talent, you don't need their execution now. People that understand SEOs, you need their experience because they understand the systems. Now, as you said, they're going to need to run agents. They need to eventually create other kind of value to the organizations. But if you are trying to avoid those conversations, this is the worst thing. Because when you put things on the table, people have the ability to raise their voice, to say what's bothering them, and to be very, very honest about them. And you have the opportunity to give your position or to help them kind of to get to the next level. And when no one is talking about that, leaving it as the elephant in the room, this is the worst thing, because then you have people that are eager to fail this. And it's very easy to fail something if you don't want this to happen. And this is creates a lot of distractions, and basically it sets for failure.
I love it. I love it because I do think that this is the right leadership, kind of spirit that people have to bring into their teams, and this is extremely inspiring. I, you touched a little bit about how there's a parallel world between human talent and agent talent, and how agents have to basically learn from humans to be good at what they do. How do you, and if you see any trends in terms of how organizations are transforming their knowledge from human knowledge to AI knowledge? And I'll even bring an interesting example. I think it was, I don't remember. It was the CEO of one of the large Silicon Valley companies that said that remote companies have a huge advantage in the AI world because they document everything. They document everything as a call because they don't speak, in person. They have to document their work. And so this becomes an advantage when they integrate it into AI systems because they have everything documented. So it's extremely easy to teach an AI agent to do work. How do you see this? And if you see any trends in this space?
So I'm not sure that I can speak about trends. I think there is a lot of kind of currently trials in many kind of areas and understanding what's working better and so on. By the way, documenting is great, but I think it's also one of the problems that we currently see with AI, that it's so easy to write emails, so easy to write documents, that you are becoming to a place where somebody needs to answer on something in 2 words, and you get like five 5 pages document that I'm not sure that they've read. So I think that documentation is always kind of tricky, because if it's not very much to the point and people really invested in it and can sign on it, this is actually becoming a very, very large junkyard. And I think that the one thing that people really need to invest currently is to assure that they document process, or they actually think what's exciting about AI and what we see that's working for us is the ability to tell people, just try to create your word currently on a very, very brief summary, what needs to happen. And then they see it translated into an agent, which is exciting because they want to make it happen. So I think, by the way, there is a lot of gamification here, right? Because all of a sudden you can do something that transform to be something that is uh, operating by itself. And I'm not sure the documentation will get to there, because what happens in documentation is that you let an agent read, and now I need to check what agent is doing. And I'm spending a lot of time on kind of the reframing and reframing and reframing on this. So I think it needs to be a very concrete kind of process. And it's regardless how it works in the organization, because I think enablement, L&Ds are super important in organizations, but they are very, very different kind of structure in every organization. By the way, from my perspective, the most important thing in the organization is how do you get this enablement the day after? Because the one thing that happens with AI is that the changes are so frequent. Up, you weren't here for a day and you don't understand who wins. Is currently ChatGPT is better than Claude in this? Is this? I mean, it's kind of how do you work today? I mean, things are constantly changes, and it's changed the enablement kind of functions from something that is solid, right? You have those kind of documentation, people read it, to something that is very liquid. Okay, what's happening today? How do we work this week? How do we work this month? And people need to get to this mindset. And by the way, this is why we are starting to move from documentation to Slack chats that eventually kind of people can see what's happening today and what is the things that are actually kind of they can do because changes are so frequent. So from my perspective, the whole L&D enablement kind of word in an AI kind of human world needs to be redefined, redesigned. Still don't have a good answer how it's going to work, but it's a big challenge.
Interesting. I and I think Papaya has the opportunity here to be really a bridge, just because you have access to so many of those examples. This is a great opportunity. I do have a question that is a little unrelated to this, but but it is related to this new type of workforce that we're talking about. Pretty much the entire conversation. We see more and more um, cases of impersonation, deep fakes, people trying to get into organizations from North Korea through, these type of stuff.
Yes.
I think there's Michael Matthias in Israel runs a company called Clarity that basically targets
Yes.
that
I
specifically.
know. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he is. And how do is this a big challenge? Like, is this a
Yes.
threat in the workforce, in
It's
the
a huge
global workforce
challenge.
management kind of thing?
It's a threat on organizations. I think it started with the double kind of job eventually trends that started post COVID, and unfortunately a lot of bad kind of behaviors of workers that don't understand that this is literally stealing, this is a crime, this is not a cool thing to deceive your employer and to work in four places, I mean, at the same time in order just to make more money. It's going to bad kind of acting of professional players, because I mean there is a very big difference, and I think that Fireblocks has an amazing case study about how they were kind of attacked by a very well organized attack from North Korea, in order to steal data by kind of approaching their employees and so on just kind of job interviews and tasks. That This is another threat to that is a huge threat to organization. And then you have the non-professional players, but we see it also with Fortune 2000 companies that are telling us people are applying for a job. Eventually they are submitting fake IDs, they are submitting fake certificates. This is global and remote kind of positions, so it's very hard for us to validate those things. And by the way, the variety of jobs that companies are hiring currently is quite massive and it's crazy. It's not necessarily only kind of developers. More and more companies that are building data centers or infrastructures are actually kind of hiring electricians and are hiring kind of, I would say, blue collar jobs that they don't even know how to evaluate. They don't even understand they don't have a process, a structured process of how to validate things. So, first, we build a very unique way here because we also sit on payment infrastructures and data that is eventually kind of being certified to regulation and eventually kind of on the payment level that obviously kind of is a bit more deeper level. But it's definitely something that needs to be top of mind for organizations, definitely global organizations, because the amount of threats that you have internally and externally on data, on people that are not necessarily working for your organizations, on a kind of people that are not who you think they are huge. Unfortunately, this is a part of the things that are coming with new technology and new capabilities that they can be kind of also misused. And I think we also see another thing, which is obviously kind of quite a lot of social engineering and kind of obviously fraud and breaches in things in the organizations that are coming from just social engineering frauds and things that people cannot really kind of determine. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said before that we see constant changes, and I think every 3 months we basically redesign the experience completely. So it was NA10, and then it was something new, and then now it's OpenClaw, and then in 3 months it's going to be a whole new world. So I think CISOs are having some hard times right now. So
That's
good.
correct. That's correct. CISO are having hard time, and people that likes stability in general are having hard time. This is a kind of a period where you need to accept the unknown, and you need to be on a very very adventure kind of mindset.
I love it. I love it. If I'm looking to the infrastructure that you guys provide, you basically have three types of workers, right? There's a full-time employee, there's a contractor, and there's a contingent worker, which is basically a KPI based type of hiring. Do you see yourself actually integrating category number four, which is AI agents, and actually managing the entire agentic workforce?
Yes, surely. We presented our kind of 2030 vision recently, and the orchestration that we are building, and eventually kind of the ability to manage fully kind of agentic workforce is already there. The ability to close a cycle of a work cycle immediately. So you want to pay somebody by the hours, I mean, at the hour that he worked for, or by the day, and so on, is there, and eventually the ability to kind of to streamline and to consolidate between those two is there. But I think this is becoming a core part of every kind of organization.
Amazing. You're talking about 2030. And I think this is also extremely brave because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow morning. But how do when we're looking at, I think one of the things that you have the ability to see is how companies are changing from kind of a bird view. If we're kind of trying to, and of course, this is a speculation and it's something that we're going to come up with, but if you envision a world of how companies are being built, in the next few years. How do you, and there are, of course, many, many, many ways to look at this. Some companies are saying it's going to be smaller teams, more agents, larger teams with more agents and more capabilities. Like it's going to be fully autonomous, less autonomous. Like, how do you see the idea of building a company changing because of AI?
So first I will tell you that we are in 2026 and we are closer to 2030 than we are to 2020. But this
You're right.
decade was so, so full of, life changing events and big kind of global events that we are still kind of, in many cases, remember where we were in the first day of COVID in 2020, and we are not looking on 2030. So from my perspective, we crossed this line. The world completely changed. We are not, I mean, none of us is speaking about how the world's going to look like when we're going to be, in lockdowns and so on. We have other problems to solve currently, but we also have great things that are happening on the AI side and so on. And we understand that 2030 is going to be completely different. So for me, it's very important kind of to look to 2030 and say, okay, I mean, we need to kind of aim to there rather than just, still carrying the COVID scars on our back.
Right.
But to your question, I think companies that are built today are built in a completely different mindset. And for good and for bad, they are built on an autonomous way because this is kind of the way that companies are operating, and they cannot allow themselves to operate differently. When we started Papaya, nobody thought that we need a server room and we will bring a physical server to the office, right? I mean, it was very, very clear for us that we will use kind of cloud services on everything that we are doing. It's the same currently. Now, every kind of generation have his privilege of I can set things on a very, very different way. We are changing a lot of things to get to a full AI native. It will take us another year or 2 years to get to full AI native because, we have history and we have legacy. But I do think that companies that are not from day one currently thinking of how do I set infrastructures that are fully AI native, how those things there is no one person in the organization that is doing them because I don't need this person. This is the right mindset, and this is the only mindset to be kind of the best in class in their kind of view. Um, it's I always give this example because I think that on organizational structure, it's very much aligned. It's much easier to gain weight than to lose weight, right? So every people that you get into the office, it's much harder to eventually kind of make his role redundant afterwards because he's already doing something. And eventually, currently, I think that every single CEO founder that is starting a company needs to think very, very, very clearly how every single employee have an ROI on under his head, over his head, and basically kind of assure that anyone that cannot generate ROI to the organization is an agent. Okay, agent needs to do a lot of things that are in the back office, but people need to bring ROI. Currently, this is my perspective.
Interesting, because you did. How do you see then the role of the entrepreneur changing?
Great question. I think that the role of the entrepreneur is becoming very interesting. First, it really depends what you are building because many of the companies are waking up and understanding that they've been taken over one of the AI giants. So I think that the first, you need to be very strategic kind of player, but you also need to always play defensive and understand if what you are building is going to be relevant and valid 5 years from now and 10 years from now. I think, by the way, this is always the most important thing when you are an entrepreneur, not to look on the here and now, because if you started something, you probably understand the pain that you're solving now. But you understand this, and 10 other people will understand this tomorrow morning. So eventually, kind of, you always need to look ahead. And, it's basically playing chess. I mean, you need to be few steps ahead of your competitors, of your industry, of your market. You need to understand trends. You need to bet sometimes because you don't, I mean, there is no certainty on things and you don't know what others are doing or what happens in the world. But you need to be very brave. If you're trying to play safe currently, I don't think that this is the word for you.
So yeah, and that's not AI related. Just general
Yeah.
advice to just make sure that you're mentally prepared for this. The last thing that I want to touch on is, you are is it the first or the only female unicorn founder in Israel?
I think I think both of them are correct. I think the first, and I think unfortunately still the only.
Is there, you know, is there something that you would like to? And I'm trying to actually get this to um, maybe somehow bridge it with the AI change. Do you think, and I'm asking a question that is very general, but trying to get to the top of my mind, do you think that this will just create more female entrepreneurs?
Yes, I'm sure. By the way, 100% positive that in a year from now you'll have a whole kind of female entrepreneur unicorn that will come from Israel and will be eventually kind of taking this kind of role. So I'm super excited about that. I mean, some of them I know in person, some of them I know that they're going to get there, even if not next year, the following years. And I think this is an exciting period in general to be entrepreneur. But I think that obviously you can you can build things faster and quicker. And there are so many talented kind of women entrepreneur out there that I see this, and it's very, very exciting.
Amazing. And I think you are an inspiration to them, and I'm happy that we have the stage to,
Thank you.
kind of share this message. We're getting to the end of this great conversation. And I think, there's so much to talk about when it comes to AI. Um, is there anything that you would like to add? Um, and I actually want to focus as much as we possibly can on this idea of, this generational transformation that we're going through in terms of how should leaders view this change?
I think leader should spend a lot of time in getting themselves to lead this change and understand that this is already happening. Okay. I mean, you cannot ignore it. This is not a trend. This is reality change. And I think the only way to get there is to have peer groups that you understand what is it they are doing. and how they're doing it and really exchange idea. Also understand, what is kind of LinkedIn fluff that's okay, maybe you're gonna get there in a few years' time and what's happening currently. What are the challenges? What they can do tomorrow morning to affect this. But I think this is needs to be top of mind. There is no time. I mean, to drag this decision and eventually kind of changes takes time. So obviously, we work on a very kind of a transparent way in Israel. We are going to publish a lot of things that we are doing internally shortly. We're just working on kind of a nice kind of serious about that. But I do invite people to ask, to see, to understand, not to be fearful. It's not about we are not ready. Everyone, I mean, think about it. No one was ready, okay? And the start needs
Right.
to happen today. If it's not going to happen today, you're not going to be ready. And maybe you can achieve amazing things. Maybe you can achieve small things, but you will achieve something. So just make it happen, because otherwise you're just going to just stand still. This is the wrong. This is the worst thing to do.
Eynat Guez, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your thoughtful responses. I appreciate your inspiration, and I really appreciate your vision. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much.